Today, we're opening the files on history's forgotten ideas. We're calling this investigation the Shadow Cabinet. Now, this isn't about politics. Think of it more as an intellectual salvage mission, a deep dive into the lost pages of our own past. So let me just ask you this. What if that timeline of great ideas, the one we all learned in school, isn't the full story? What if some of the most powerful concepts were deliberately hidden, or maybe just conveniently forgotten? Or were they just too strange for their time? Well, that's what we're here to investigate.
Our mission here is pretty straightforward. We're acting like historical detectives. We're trying to recover these lost ideas, specifically the ones that got shoved into the shadows because they were either forgotten, way too controversial, or actively suppressed. Okay, our first piece of evidence, this is a big one. It's about an idea so threatening to an established power that it basically had to be erased. This is a classic case of suppression by force.
So, take a look at this. On one side, a name everyone knows, Jesus of Nazareth. On the other, a figure you've probably never heard of, Apollonius of Tyana. Now here's where it gets kind of wild. He was a philosopher from the 1st century. And just look at the parallels here. Both healed the sick. Both, according to the stories, raised the dead. Both challenged authority. So what's the deal? Why is one name globally recognized and the other is almost completely lost? So why have most of us never heard of this guy? Well, as the early Christian church was really starting to build its power, having a rival miracle worker running around was, let's just say, too inconvenient. It just didn't fit the singular narrative they were trying to build. So Apollonius was either painted as some kind of charlatan or a sorcerer, or, even more effectively, he was just erased from the story.
All right, on to our second case. This one's different. Here, an idea isn't erased by some outside force. No, it's rejected by us, out of fear. We're the ones who build our own cozy cage of comfort.
This brings us to a really fascinating philosophy called the spirit of contempt. It's that little voice in your head that whispers, hey, don't bother, play it safe. It argues that true wisdom isn't about bravely looking into the abyss, life's dangers and uncertainties. It's about building a world where you can pretend the abyss isn't even there.
And this image just nails the concept, doesn't it? Imagine that all our rules, our laws, our daily routines, they're like this perfectly polished silver floor. It's beautiful, it feels solid under our feet, and it's all designed to make us forget that right underneath, there's a chaotic, maybe even meaningless void. It's a really comforting illusion. This whole thing sets up a really fundamental choice in life. You could call it the choice between the overman and the last man. Do you choose the path of the overman, the one who walks the tightrope, the one who embraces risk and struggle because they want to become something more? Or do you choose the path of the last man, the one who stays on the ground with the comfortable crowd, the one who just wants to be safe and entertained?
And that leads to a pretty critical question, right? Why is this idea of walking the tightrope, of striving and taking risks, why is it so often ignored? Well, the parable this comes from suggests a kind of terrifying truth about us. A lot of us would rather have the safety of a gilded cage than the terrifying freedom of the tightrope.
Our last case is maybe the most subtle of all. This is about ideas that don't get forcibly suppressed or rejected out of fear. They just fade away. They fade away because they're too difficult, and honestly, we just lose interest. They get lost to our own collective apathy.
I want you to meet another Apollonius. This is Apollonius of Perga, known back in the day as the Great Geometer. His work on patterns like this Apollonian gasket wasn't just some abstract math problem. To him and others like him, this was a sacred map of reality itself, a way to actually see the infinite. Let me show you how this works. It's so simple, it's beautiful. You start with a few circles. Then you nest smaller circles perfectly into the gaps between them. Then you just do it again in the new gaps, and again, forever. From a few basic rules, you literally generate infinite complexity. This is the heart of fractal geometry, and they knew about it millennia ago. But this was so much more than a mental puzzle. For the ancient thinkers who really got it, this was a profound worldview. It was a way of seeing the infinite hidden inside the finite, a peek into the fundamental structure of the cosmos. And yet, this incredible way of seeing things just languished for centuries, lost in the shadows of human thought.
Which brings us right back to the crowd, doesn't it? Why was this incredible idea just left behind? Well, the suggestion is, it's because we often prefer the simple stories
the easy distractions of the marketplace over the complex, demanding truths of the universe. Grappling with the infinite? Yeah, it's just too much work sometimes.
So, after pulling these 3 cases from the shadow cabinet, what's the final verdict? Well, we've seen 3 totally distinct ways a powerful idea can just vanish from history.
And this really sums it up perfectly. First, an idea can be seen as a threat, so it gets actively crushed by rivals. That was the story of Apollonius of Tyana. Second, an idea can be rejected out of fear. It makes us uncomfortable, so the crowd just chooses to ignore it in favor of comfort. That's the tightrope walker. And third, an idea can get lost to sheer complexity. It's just too hard, so we passively abandon it because we crave simplicity.
And that leaves us with one last, pretty provocative thought. If these are the patterns of the past, and they almost certainly are, then they're probably the patterns of the present too. So, the real question is, what forbidden lore, what challenging truths, what uncomfortable philosophies are we choosing to leave in the shadows right now?